don't we go ahead and start the recording? We've got a lot of information to go through. Welcome, everyone. We're so happy to have you here with us today for Making Your Home Healthier. We have got a lot of information to share. This slide was up as people were coming into the room. If you haven't had an opportunity to share, please type into the chat where you're joining from and any specific health concerns that you have about your home. We've been seeing a lot about air quality and mold and gas appliances, radon, lead pipes. We've been seeing a lot. So hopefully we'll be touching on many of those things. Managing humidity levels, quite a variety of topics that folks are typing in. So please continue to add that. If you need closed captioning today, you can find that closed captioning button at the bottom of your slide. And so if you have any issues or need assistance with that, please send a message to Lauren, who I'm going to be introducing in just a few minutes, but she can help you with that. So Lauren, I'm going to ask if you could bring up this poll. We're curious why people are participating today. For personal use, professional use, or both. That always gives us a kind of an idea of who's in the room. Wait just a few more seconds here, and then we'll share those poll results. All right, Lauren, why don't you share those results? It looks like about 68% are here for personal use, a few for professional use, and about a third of you, 30% for both personal and professional. Thank you for responding to that poll. That was helpful. Great, thank you. All right, so my name is Sara Croymans, and I'm an extension educator with the University of Minnesota Extension, located out of our West Central regional office out of Morris. And so I work in the area of financial capability, financial resilience. And today with us is Patrick Huelman. And Pat, I'm going to have you introduce yourself because you'll do a much better job.
Sure. Yeah, I'm with the University of Minnesota. I'm a state extension specialist in building and energy systems. I reside in the Department of Bioproducts and Biosystems Engineering. My background is basically a building scientist, trying to make buildings efficient, healthy, and durable.
Great. And I'm so pleased to be able to partner with Patrick on this because he's really our specialist in the area. And if I can share, Patrick, when we were working on a title, and we've presented this a few times prior and have updated it every time, tweaked it a bit. But when we were working on the title, one of our options was healthy homes. And you really said, well, we should really be talking about healthier homes because we're never quite going to get to that purely healthy home, right?
Yeah, it's a hard absolute target, right? There's always health hazards in our home. And we aren't going to eliminate all of them. So I think it's just probably fair to say we want to be moving in that direction. That's kind of the intent today, is to try to help us move towards healthier.
Great, great. I had indicated earlier that we have Lauren with us. Lauren Backus is one of our University of Minnesota Extension administrative specialists. She's one of our regional support staff, and she's here today to support all of us with tech issues. She's going to be monitoring the chat box. She's going to be throwing some links in there. She's working with our recording, and as you can see, she's multitasking as well when we're on the Zoom. So if you need any assistance, feel free to private message Lauren, and she'll be able to help you out there. So this is another chat opportunity. I'm hoping folks can share in the chat. What is a healthy home to you? What does that mean? When you think about healthy homes, what does that mean for you? Go ahead and type in the chat. Thanks, Amber. A home that doesn't make you sick. Robin, good air quality and ventilation, free from toxic chemicals. Crystal, good air quality, low allergens. Nora, that your home isn't contributing to existing. Oh, they're coming in really fast here. Existing or new health concerns. It's a safe and happy place to live. Thank you, Nora. I love the happy piece. Amy, clean and safe for kids, pets, adults, guests. Patricia, being able to live without getting sick by something in the home. Easy to breathe. It's clean, good air quality, healthy water, environmentally safe. A place where you want to spend time. Great clean air, no toxic fumes. Allows everyone to thrive, both physically and emotionally. Thanks, Lindsay. That's a great response. And that your health and well-being are not repeated or negatively impacted by living in the home. All great responses. You can continue to put those in the chat, but I love that, right? So we're not going to, hopefully a healthy home is we're not going to get sick. We can be happy there as well. One element of a lifelong wellness program is healthy homes, and health and safety are oftentimes different and separate concepts in people's minds. And a lot of healthy homes content has fallen under the notion of safety and home maintenance. But when we think about health, it might conjure up concepts related to nutrition, exercise, and mental health. But there's a space where these ideas come together, and that's because of your home environment. And that includes the home safety and the environmental health of your home are all connected. And so that mental and physical health, nutrition, financial and environmental, and several of you touched on those. And so I'm so pleased that we've identified that. Florence Nightingale said that the connection between health and dwelling is one of the most important that exists. And so it was an issue and a concern, a need back then, and it continues to be so today. Our home environments are so very important. With this diagram here, housing problems can cause a ripple effect of impacts. Here is just a diagram that shows how perhaps a single housing problem can lead to multiple health effects and economic impacts. So in thinking, if we have the housing problem, in this example, water leaks in the middle, there's in the next ring some hazards that could happen, right? Mold, electrical, lead issues, maybe structural collapses. Then we look at that next ring of health effects. And then, of course, there would be costs to the individual and costs to society, all stemming in this example from a simple water leak. So we know that simple issues can definitely have a ripple effect and cause a lot of heartache and challenges for individuals, families, and communities as well. So when we look at our indoor environmental health, there's some key health risks in our home, trips and falls, infectious disease, foodborne illnesses, and indoor air quality risks is another. And today we're going to focus mostly pretty much on the indoor air quality and the risks in our home. So that's where we're going to be focusing today. So HUD has identified 8 principles of a healthy home. Keeping it dry, right? So preventing water from entering our home, either through the roof or, rain coming in, causing damage, flooding, those sorts of things. Keeping it clean, so controlling the source of dust and contaminants, creating smooth, cleanable surfaces. Reducing clutter, which is a big one for some people, using effective wet cleaning methods, keeping it safe. So storing poisons out of reach of children, making sure we're not going to be tripping on rugs, all of those things, installing smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, so keeping it safe. Keeping it pest free, one of my goals for sure, right? To keep the little critters out of the house. So those pests are looking for food and water and shelter. So what can we do to seal cracks and openings and do things to make sure that they can't get into the home? The sixth one there is to keep it contaminant free. And so to reduce lead related hazards in homes that were built before 1978. And so again, testing our home for radon and different things. So we want to work on being contaminant free. 7, keeping it well maintained, right? So typically our homes are our biggest investment. So what do we need to do to clean and repair and to make sure that we address those things while they're small, because repairs that don't get addressed initially typically turn into bigger issues. So how can we keep our home well maintained that impacts our healthy home? And then the last one, keeping it comfortable and efficient. And so inspecting clean and let me see, comfortable and efficient. So making sure that it is comfortable and that it's set up appropriately. And one that I'm not sure that we have on the list that is addressed at times is thermally controlled, and homes that do not maintain adequate temperatures may place the safety of residents at increased risk from exposure to extreme heat or cold. So these are great principles of healthy homes to take a look at. Now I'm going to pass it on to Pat, who's going to walk us through the next bunch of slides.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I'm going to want to kind of back up here and look at the big picture just for a minute, kind of set the context for what we're going to talk about, the specific pollutants and solutions today. But interestingly enough, in a typical day, an adult will eat a pound of food, give or take, 5 pounds of water. I think it's supposed to be 8, but we don't all get the 8 glasses or whatever, and breathe about 54 pounds of air. So we don't think of air as having mass, but it does. And we take in and inhale and exhale a lot of it. So we think about how careful people are about what they eat and what they don't eat, or the quality of the water that they drink. But too often we don't think about the quality of the air that they breathe. So this is from a indoor air quality researcher, Dr. Richard Corsi, and he developed this series. And I just want to pause here a second to see if anybody knows what this series of numbers might represent. 79, 69, 54, 26, 6, and 4. Any thoughts? Well, it represents years. 79 is the average life expectancy. 69 years of your life, of that 79, you'll spend indoors. 54 of those are in your years or in your home. 26, I always kind of joke because this is a Richard Corsi joke. 26 years of your life, you'll be breathing your pillow. So you might want to launder that pillowcase an extra time or two. 6 years will be outdoors on average, and 4 years you'll spend in your vehicle. So again, back to this idea of indoor air quality and why it's important, especially in our houses. And everything's connected to everything. And this is true kind of at 3 levels. You know, health, your personal health is a system of parts and pieces that work together, right? The indoor air quality, its impact on your health will be, between you and your indoor environment. But the building's also a system too, how the heating cooling system interacts, how the ventilation interacts with your building, how your building enclosure keeps you warm and dry, et cetera. So there's a series of systems here that are really ultimately driving the quality of the indoor environment and its impact on your health. So we have a little poll here. Just want to get a sense from folks what you think. What daily activities, things you do from day to day, have the biggest impact on your indoor air quality? Well, coming in fast and furious. It's great. We're getting close here. So range and stovetop cooking came up large, cleaning came up large. Bathing and dishwashing didn't come up so large. That's probably true for the most part. For ventilating our bathroom when we're bathing or showering, if we are careful about what products we use when we're dishwashing, they should have minimal impact. Microwave cooking, is concerned beyond just indoor air quality and the microwave. But again, if it's been maintained and properly and checked, it's safe. So the big two really are the range, and we'll get into that in the stove or oven cooking and cleaning. And again, cleaning, assuming people are using the right products and have a vacuum that's good at capturing particles, it shouldn't be huge, but it can be. So let's move on here. Thank you, everyone. Close it. All right, so I'm just going to hit some top, what I call trouble spots, and they've broken them into two kind of categories. The first being the building itself. What parts of the building could be contributing adversely to your indoor air quality? First is combustion equipment, and I noticed, when people are checking in, talk about gas appliances and the role that they might play. That might be your furnace, a boiler, a space heater. Might also include things like your range cooktop, oven, and also wood stoves, fireplaces, etc. Another is attached garage. So where do we put stuff we don't want in our house? Put it in the garage. But if the house is slightly negative pressure relative to outdoors, we draw all that stuff into the house. Same thing when we start the car, etc. So we do worry about things that are in our garage getting into our home. And I don't know if anybody saw this news yesterday. Somebody, I think they saved them, but had an emergency with carbon monoxide poisoning because they were running a generator in their house because they'd lost power. Well, the generator in the garage, I'm sorry, lost power. And they had the garage door open. And it still got into the home at a very, very high level. So got to be careful of those things in the garage, because your house and garage is connected better than you might like to think. And last are things that are happening in the basements and crawl spaces. I frequently say, we are what we eat. Well, your air is what's in the basement and crawl space. That air automatically wants to come up into your home just by natural physics, natural forces. And so if you aren't pretty happy with what's down there, I'm guessing you're probably breathing some things you don't really want to be breathing. Includes moisture issues and mold, radon, other things. It can be in the soil or in the crawl space itself. The second part is what I call occupant related, things that we're doing in the house that may contribute to poor indoor air quality. Kitchen cooking is a big one. So that was on the poll. It was really tickled to see how many people appreciate the impact of kitchen cooking. This has changed a lot in the last 10 years, the recognition of, in particular, fine particulates, but also the combustion gases, either from the cooking process or if you have gas, but even electric cooking produces lots of fine particulates that are a high risk. We'll talk more about that later. Cleaning, like I said, if you're using the right cleaning products, minimizing toxic products you're using them properly. If you're doing have a vacuum that's good at capturing the particles rather than just scattering them up into the air, we can minimize that, but it's important to mind both of those things: proper cleaning and proper vacuuming. The hobbies, of course, got to be careful with hobbies. Many of our hobbies have either chemicals or fine particulates. Even sanding wood can create some very fine particulates that can be particularly troublesome to the respiratory system. And last, one of the things that was mentioned earlier in the chat, excessive humidity. Managing the humidity in your home is very important. Make sure the dryer is properly vented to the outdoors, not indoors. Line drying, here and there, that's fine, but it can contribute to excess humidity. If you have lack of proper kitchen ventilation or bath ventilation, obviously that can contribute. And something that people don't think about is stored firewood. So if the firewood comes in heavy and then goes into your wood stove or fireplace a lot lighter, that's all moisture that was released into your house. Sometimes some older leaky homes, that's not a challenge, but for our more modern, more airtight homes, that can be more humidity than the house wants or needs. So now we're going to go through, I think we have 8 particular pollutants of concern. I'm going to start with the combustion products, and safe venting. this has to be a huge priority. This is a life, safety, or illness and death, potential death from carbon monoxide poisoning. And so I just want to mention briefly that there's 3 types of combustion equipment. We're talking about furnaces and water heaters in particular here. This isn't necessarily so for, say a range or a wood stove, perhaps. But first is what we call chimney vented. So if you have a chimney in your house, what goes up through the house, the outside of the house or inside the house, and there's a chimney, a vent sticking off out of the roof, that's a chimney vented appliance. It relies on natural buoyancy up of hot gases up the chimney. They're quite risky because it's very easy. That's not a high force. It's not a lot of pressure. And so we can turn that around quite easily by turning on a clothes dryer or a range hood or something like that and bring those gases instead back into the home. So we're moving away from those, certainly in new construction, and we should be moving away from those kinds of appliances in our existing homes. The next is a power vented appliance. There's actually a fan in the appliance itself that pumps the hot gases, combustion gases, and byproducts out of the building through typically a plastic pipe vent. And generally, the risks from these are pretty low. They're still using house air to get the job done. But if there is a challenge or a block or a plug or some kind of problem in the system, typically they have a safety switch and won't continue to operate. The last is a sealed combustion where there's actually 2 pipes. One pipe's taking air from outside, and once the combustion has taken place, all the combustion gases are vented to the outdoors again, typically with a fan, under fan power. For all practical purposes, that furnace water heater is sitting outdoors. It doesn't know it's in your house. It's all of its combustion activity is connected to the outdoors and not your home. So that's the safest level. It's very unlikely that the combustion gases can be drawn back into your home. I'm gonna just stop. I saw a couple things here. I said something about the microwave. There are test kits for checking microwave to see if there's any radiation leakage around your microwave. And then on the cleaning products, is again, just paying attention to the labels and trying to use things that don't contain toxic or caustic chemicals when possible. Or if you are using them, certainly use the right protection, gloves, eye protection, in some cases respiratory mask protection. All right, on to combustion safety. So
Pat, if I can interrupt just to
sure.
someone else had a question, or Danielle again, where do you find those microwave test kits?
They used to be available in hardware stores, and again, it was a very simple test just to try to see if there was leakage around the seal of the door. I haven't seen them recently, so it's possible they aren't still out there. Most microwaves have a good seal, and there's very little likelihood of leakage today, unless something's really, the door is amiss or the gaskets broken or missing or not sealing. So it's pretty small risk, but we just want to make sure people are paying attention and taking care of their microwave, proper maintenance.
Great. And typically those appliances are pretty reasonably priced. If it's questionable, it might be good just to upgrade, right? Or to
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Back to the combustion. So these chimney vented appliances, like I said, can backdraft or spill the combustion gases back into the house if there was a blockage. I've been to homes where, a farmer was incredibly ill, almost lost his farm, but his farm office was right next door to the furnace room, and they'd had a squirrel's nest in the chimney, and it apparently, to my not expert opinion, probably been there for years. So just blocking a chimney can, be extremely hazardous to the health of the indoor air, your health and the indoor air quality. If you have negative pressure, like I said, from a clothes dryer range hood, we like range hoods because cooking, like I said, has these fine particles and gases that we want to remove quickly. But they put a negative pressure in the house and can induce a downdraft or backdraft in the chimney of your furnace or water heater. Again, so we want to limit that negative pressure the best we can by sealing ductwork, especially return leaks that are near the furnace or water heater itself. And when you turn on that range hood, strange as it might sound, you may need to open up crack a window or a clothes dryer. If you have a tighter home and you're concerned, you can open the window to try to provide what we call makeup air for that device so it doesn't put as big a negative pressure on the home. So ultimately, have a good carbon monoxide alarm or detector, or 2 or 3. Certainly you should be having your combustion equipment maintained on a regular basis. Annual might be more frequently you need on the newer equipment, but older equipment, you might want to have an annual check. And they're looking for proper combustion at the flame, at the burner, and they should be conducting a draft test to see if it will actually draft under both normal conditions and if there's a negative pressure in the home. And like I said, having carbon monoxide alarms is critical, at least one in each level, one within 10 foot of each bedroom, and one in the vicinity of the area that might be producing carbon monoxide, not right next to the furnace, not right on top of the water heater, but in the area. And that could give you an early warning detection. Number 2, these are particles that are very small and can be inhaled into our respiratory system, our nose, our throat or trachea, down into the bronchial tubes that split and on into the lungs themselves. This respirable particulate matter is measured in its diameter. It's called aerodynamic diameter. Don't need to go down into the details or the weeds here, but it's basically a size of the particle. The smaller the particle, the deeper it can go in the lung. The large particles, I think most of us are quite familiar, when you're out in a dusty environment, your nose catches a lot of that. That's a good thing. Your throat might catch much of it, and it kind of works its way back up out of the system. But once it's down in the lung, it's hard for it to get removed. And so again, these particles may just cause irritation, nose, throat, and lung irritation. They may trigger allergies or asthma. And certainly some of them can cause lung disease or cancer or other heart disease actually as well. I'll show you why in a sec here. All right, so the large particles, 5 to 10 microns, don't go as deep in the lung. And again, they typically get caught kind of at the nasal or throat level, and they can be irritants. They can obviously at that level trigger allergies and or asthma. Things like pollen and mold spores and or inorganic material even. Pet dander is a common trigger, a fairly large particle. And then dust mites. When people say, you have dust allergies or household allergies, most cases are referring to the dust mite. It's a critter that grows, they're on our body, in our bed, in our favorite chair. They're everywhere. And they live off a skin scale, but they need a lot of humidity. So they tend to be higher in high humidity environments, like your bed or your favorite chair. But the point here is as they die, and those parts, well, their fecal matter, as well as when they die, the parts and pieces of the exoskeleton can cause allergies and asthma. This is relatively easy for the big stuff. So big stuff include pet dander, pollens, like I said, even the dust mite particles and pieces. And we can catch that with a reasonable filter. MERV is a filter rating. Most furnace filter, older style furnace filters might be a MERV 2 or 3, maybe a 4 if you're lucky. You can buy higher MERV filters, although you have to be careful because typically they have a higher resistance. So as we move into MERV 8 or higher filters, you'll see this filter has much deeper pleats, so you get a lot more surface area. That minimizes the pressure that the fan has to work against due to your increased filtration. Also, carpets are a good source for particles to hang out and hide out. It's kind of a sink, if you will, for particles. And then as we walk across, we kick them up and get a chance to breathe them. So that's where good cleaning practices, deep cleaning with a good vacuum that has high power, high suction. So the particles want to go in, as a HEPA filter, so we don't just kick them back into the room, is quite important. And then we move into smooth surface flooring, which would be preferable. It's easy to damp mop and keep those particles in check. Of course, people enjoy having carpet underfoot. I understand that, but it's just a matter of trying to keep the amount of dust particles that are hidden there waiting to come out at a minimum.
Pat, if I can interrupt.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was a question on, and this goes back a few slides, but how do you check for backdrafting?
Yeah, so backdrafting, the simple check from a homeowner perspective is to look. So if you have a furnace that has a chimney, there's going to be a grill on the front a couple of them. One is for air to go into the combustion chamber, and the second grill is what's called excess air, or a diverter that's actually bringing additional air into the chimney system to cool the gases down a little bit, but to also ensure proper venting. It's called a diverter. On top of a water heater, it's that little cone-shaped device that sits on top of a water heater. If you go near your furnace and water heater and you see a lot of dust sticking to that, that's probably because moisture has rolled out and condensed on there and the dust is sticking. If you see little black particles or little shiny particles there, that's probably due to moisture that's condensing in the actual flue, and those particles are dropping back down on top of the water heater or in the furnace. Those are classic signs that you might have a furnace or water heater that's experiencing backdrafting. To really test it, I would hire a professional that comes in. I mentioned, you can check for backdrafting while they're doing a tune-up. The problem is, what you want to do is check it and then turn on some exhaust equipment to see if it'll backdraft. And that's dangerous because it could be backdrafting combustion byproducts, including carbon monoxide. So people that are doing this have protection, have meters and monitors to protect themselves under that situation. Checking it just under normal operations, a good place to start, but you really want to kind of push it and test it against conditions that might exist in your home, and that really requires a professional.
We'll do one more question and then we'll let you get onto your slides. How can you tell if your system can handle a higher numbered MERV filter?
Yeah, that's the challenge here. And so most HVAC contractors hate high MERV filters because they don't want to get a call back that your furnace fan wasn't happy, or the airflow fell back too far, which then causes the furnace to hit a high limit and trip out. And then you're unhappy because your furnace isn't running for when you want it. Or for your air conditioning airflow to slow down and you freeze up a coil and you lose your air conditioning. So there's some good reasons why people are nervous about stepping up their filter. But what's really key here is, if you try to take a 1-inch filter that now, like I said, is a 3 or a 4 MERV, and stick a 10 or 11 in there, you're probably going to have trouble. It's simply going to be too great a resistance. But if you change the filter slot out and put in a 4-inch box or a 5-inch box for a larger filter, the static pressure, or the pressure that the fan sees, the resistance that the fan sees, will probably be equal to or less than your original filter. So that's the real key here is, and again, I'd hire a professional that, if you're thinking about going more than maybe a MERV 8 on a 1-inch filter, because it may simply be too resistant, and you'd have a furnace contractor check that. Or you go to the larger filter. Again, probably if you're handy, you can put that in, but in most cases you'd hire a professional to install that new furnace cage or box to accept that larger filter. That's where it really needs to go, and that's all new homes should be having a 4 or 5-inch plated filter today, but unfortunately that's not the case. Just keep in mind, the filter that comes with the furnace is for the furnace. It's not for you at all. All they want to do is keep the big particles out of the fan and off the coil or off the combustion heat exchanger. This has nothing to do with air quality. It's for the benefit of the furnace. So if you want better air quality, you have to go to a higher MERV filter, and that's, like I said, either may be able to push it a little bit with the 1-inch filter, or you're going to swap filter type and filter size. All right. And we'll come back to another possibility here. So the fine ultrafine particles, the 1 to 5 microns, these are very small. They go deep into your lungs. In addition to creating eye, nose, and throat irritation, they can aggravate respiratory problems. They can cause some certain respiratory systems. And because the particles can actually slide across the lung blood boundary, they can actually get into your bloodstream and cause other issues. And they certainly can cause heart issues if you aren't getting good air oxygen exchange or other issues. So these are really important. These are probably the largest health risk in your home today, and a lot of it comes from your cooking, from your laundry, and unfortunately out of your carpet too. Most of it's actually the superfine particles are out of the cooking or combustion. Backdraft combustion also has particles in addition to dangerous gases. So here's the common sources: cooking from range oven, and you should be using your range hood when you use your oven or stovetop, whether it's gas or electric, both cases. Gas, there's a little extra emphasis or importance because there is gas combustion, and none of the burners burn perfectly clean. Just can't do it at the scale that you're doing, especially when you set a big cold pot on top of it. The other thing is always try to use your rear burners with your range hood rather than your front, because the front burners are rarely captured very well by the range hood. Now, of course, this assumes your range hood's vented the outdoors and it's on and it actually works. Those are not, you can't just assume that all those are true. Many of our range hoods are recirculating. Again, so the marketplace is now finally recognizing the importance of this and moving to better hoods that are vented to the outdoors. Now it's a matter of kind of helping people appreciate why they need to run them. And buy a quiet one, and you're more likely to run it than if you get a noisy one that's too loud you can't even talk to whoever's in the kitchen with you. Tobacco smoke, incense, candles, pretty obvious. These are very fine particles and soot particles and things that are really small, can go deep in the lung. And then outdoor air can be a source too, right? When there's wind and other events and things are whipping up, not just the big particles, but it's also whipping up small particles, or we get into a wildfire event. There's a lot of very fine particles in smoke, and they can be a lung irritant as well. So another possibility is actually freestanding filtration. So if you can't get the big filter that you really want on the furnace, you can buy standalone units. Here's one you can make yourself. You buy 4 MERV 13 filters, you buy a box fan, you tape everything up so it's no air leaks. You put a little shroud around the top so the corners don't leak, reverse. And you can actually have a very effective way of removing fine particulates in that particular room or area. So again, that's the only thing you be careful here is you're trying to shoot for MERV 13. That means they fill up fast. So most of these, if you buy a commercial one, is going to have a pre-filter to protect the MERV 13 filter. But absolutely avoid anything with ionization or ozone. Both of those, ozone's a troublesome gas in your indoor environment for a whole bunch of reasons I can't go into today. And the ionization can actually create more harm than good. So you want just a straight up filter, mechanical media filter. It will do the job. All right, we better move along here. Moisture and mold. I think everybody's probably pretty familiar with this. Mold's a fungus. Somebody asked about mildew. Mildew is also a fungus. Wood decay fungus is a fungus, right? So fungi are a big class of organisms. And when they grow in our house, whether it's mold or mildew or even wood decay fungi, some of them, they can be an irritant for our health. You can't have mold without moisture. So I always say there's no such thing as a mold problem. If you have mold, there's a moisture problem. In most cases, if you have a moisture problem, it's because you have a lack of energy. Something's cold, it's condensing, it's not drying because it's too cold. So again, take away the moisture, that takes away the environment for the mold. You still need to clean up the existing mold or the prior mold condition, but then keep things nice, warm and dry. Like I said, cold windows or cold edges of rooms and top plates and corners. People put furniture against the wall and pull it out and go, oh my goodness. It's common to have mold behind your toilet tank because that's cold water and kind of a trapped area. You don't clean very often. Basements and crawl spaces, of course, most all of them have mold because they're cold and wet. And it is a health concern. So mold spores, the fungal matter from old mold colonies, we call them mycelium, they break down. Those particles can be small, and they, as well as the mycotoxins that are being produced while the mold is growing actively, can contribute to a range of respiratory illness, allergies, and asthma. Look for obvious signs of water, whether it's bulk water, leaks, condensation. Those are, all of those are sources of potential concern. One that we had this year that some may be struggling with still are ice dams. So when you have ice dams, the ice dam itself isn't a problem. I mean, it can get heavy enough to cause some structural concerns. It's the water behind the ice dam that ultimately breaches the shingles and other materials you have to protect the structure, and you get water into the attic or into the wall or into the soffit, and that comes back into the wall, and that can lead obviously to a lot of wet materials. It can lead to structural deterioration and obviously mold growth too. But probably the most troublesome is when that water actually breaches and gets into your interior plaster or drywall or other interior finishes, leaks down into your carpet, under your carpet, things like that. And this is a prime opportunity for mold to grow. What you want to do is catch it as quick as you can and dry it as best as you can, as fast as you can. The one thing that's happening with the moisture in your wall or in your soffit or in your attic is mold and decay fungi aren't that happy when it's around freezing or, let's say below 40. So you got a chance to get this dried out before the weather warms. That's a real plus. As soon as it warms up, the mold can grow much, much faster, much more prolific. Fixture for moist surfaces. Well, if I'll just use window as an example, but it could be, a dry piece of drywall, a corner, whatever, it doesn't matter. When you see moisture condensation, there's only two things you can do. You reduce the indoor humidity by turning off any humidifiers, of course, by improving your ventilation, your bath, kitchen, making sure your dryer's vented, managing soil moisture from, in a crawl space or basement or whatever. You just have to reduce the relative humidity, reduce the moisture sources. You can also increase ventilation. That will bring down the relative humidity. The second thing you can do is warm up the surface by insulating it, by doing certain things like window kits, if they're properly installed, warm up the inside surface and reduce potential condensation. But don't put carpet on a concrete slab. That cools the slab and makes it much more opportunistic for condensation, or if there is any moisture, it can't dry. Remember, mold is a moisture problem. Moisture problems typically are lack of energy problem. It's not getting airflow and it's not getting energy from the house, and the cold slab will be a perfect spot for mold to grow, in addition to having food source there.
At what's the recommended humidity level in a home?
Yeah, it depends a lot on your house. If you've got a super duper house with good building enclosure, envelope, good windows, yeah, you can probably carry 30% when it's the middle of winter. And as you move out from the middle of winter, you can carry 35 or 40. On an older home, you're probably going to need to be drier than that. You might be at 20 in the middle of winter and 25, 30, 35 when it's mild. The bigger problem here that I didn't have on this that I should mention is frequently the humidity problem and mold problem we have nowadays is in the summer. We're getting very poor dehumidification in the summer because air conditioners either aren't used or they aren't sized properly, they aren't running right, and we end up with very high humidities in the summer. In the summer, you got to get your humidity under 60%, preferably closer to 50%. So winter, you're going to be drier because of all the cold surfaces. In the summer, you got to get down in that, ideally in the 50 RH range to avoid mold growth on certain surfaces, especially cold surface like basement, et cetera. Again, it's pretty obvious stuff here, just looking for leaks, both exterior and interior, checking the humidity there. We talked about relative humidity. Cutting down on steam that you're releasing from the stove, perhaps running your fans, throwing away things that get wet, cleaning things, bleach, soap, and water. Certainly vent your dryer outdoors. I'm rushing these a little bit. I want to get ahead here so Sarah can finish up our last few. Volatile organic compounds. These are basically semi-volatile chemicals. They are normally, think of paint, for instance. You put paint on liquid and it ends up a solid. What happened? Well, something had to evaporate, right? Now, if it's latex paint, it's mostly water. That's fine. But we have a lot of products we bring into our house that have these compounds under the right temperature, humidity condition, evaporate or off gas into the air that we breathe. And just down below, you see some of the common contributors, if you will, and being careful about composite wood products and the kinds of finishes that we use. Even personal care products, air fresheners frequently give off a lot of VOCs, and some of them are actually pretty nasty. And then other activities that we have in our house, including smoking and cooking and hobbies, can give off volatile organic compounds that can be respiratory irritants or worse. Again, acute, there's kind of two problems. There are acute exposures that lead to a lot of eye, nose, ear, throat irritation, or headaches, nausea, vomiting, dizziness, perhaps some asthma, stress. And then there's these long-term exposures to certain chemicals, like I'll just say, for instance, benzene, common off gas from gasoline. Shouldn't have benzene in your home, but I'm saying it's with chronic exposure that can cause cancer or liver and kidney damage, or even damage to your central nervous system. So we want to be careful what we bring in the house. Buy only what you need, store and use chemicals in the garage or shed, closed containers. There actually are cabinets you can buy that are ventilated to the outdoors, and you put the stuff in the cabinet and then ventilates anything that off gases to the outdoors. Purchase low VOC options and let things off gas before you put them in the house if you can. There's recommendations that when you bring home dry clean, let it off gas in the porch, garage, somewhere outside before you bring it in for a day or two. Again, I think that's not practical, but that's an example of the things we have to think about. And then once the gases are in the house, just do a good job of ventilating. A lot of people say my old home, it's got lots of leaks. I don't need ventilation, and that's not true. Leaky houses don't always leak. If it isn't real cold and the wind isn't blowing, they don't leak at all. So you got to have ventilation in your house. Keep your temperature and relative humidity as low as possible. That tends to increase off gassing. When you're doing home renovations, be very careful. In some cases, it probably makes sense to leave the house during the renovation or accelerate the ventilation that you're using. Radon gas is a radioactive gas that's in the soil and gets drawn into the home. You can't see it, smell it, or taste it. It is radioactive, and when the radioactive decay particles break down your lungs, it can cause damage to the DNA tissue in your lung and cause lung cancer. So this is one we want to be concerned about. It is easy to test for. There are test kits available. So start by testing. If you have high levels, fix. And again, there are professionals that can come out and test and mitigate or remediate. Smoking actually increases the risk a bit because the smoke has all these fine particles we've been talking about. The radon particles can stick to that and go deep into the lung again. Keep the home well ventilated. Seal your basement and your floor cracks and crawl space. Make sure you have a ground cover that's sealed if you have a crawl space. Apologize for rushing here a little bit, but I think you get the point here. And there are good resources for this that we have listed here in the slides. I want to answer a question before we go on here. Just a quick one. The internet has plans for that MERV box. Yeah, it's called the Corsi Rosenthal box. It's kind of been all the rage out there since COVID started. And there's just a wonderful video of probably a middle school, maybe probably a 5th or 6th grader building the box and teaching other kids and adults how to build a box. It's classic. It's not difficult. So yeah, go online. You'll see that. Can reinsulating a house help with issues? Yes, reinsulating is going to warm up and same thing, putting in new windows or higher performing windows. You warm up the inside surface. As you insulate and less heat's moving out, the inside stays warmer. However, when you re-insulate that or put in new windows, you are air sealing the house potentially too, which means the moisture is being produced inside will stay longer. And then you need to be thinking more about good ventilation to manage that. And the ice dam pucks, yeah, we could go on and on about ice dams. It's an area that I have some expertise in. If they help you get a trench in the dam itself so that water can drain, you'll still have ice. You can't, the ice ridge can move. You take off 2 feet of snow, the ridge will simply be 2 foot higher in most homes. The key is trying to open up a groove, if you will, in the ice dam. So you remove the water. And of course, that's the problem, right? Is the water that's stored behind challenging your roof. But with that, I better turn it over to Sarah. Sorry, Sarah.
No worries, Pat. And really, we probably should have planned for an hour and a half for this webinar because we have so much information. So I'm going to go through the next slides pretty quick here and just give the high level information. We will be providing copies of the slides and a follow-up email, so you will have those. And we will also include contact information for both Pat and myself as well. And do know that Lauren will be putting the evaluation link in the chat here shortly. So if you are seeking a certificate of participation or U of M well-being points for insurance purposes, that will be through the evaluation link. So we're going to talk quickly about asbestos. So it's a mineral fiber that occurs in rock and soil, so a naturally occurring thing. But it's there, we find it in a lot of different products as well, and you can see the list of where asbestos is used. And we experience exposure when it's disturbed or damaged. So that's when those particles are released, those fibers go into the air. And so there's a lot of health concerns. And you can see those listed there. And so we really want to avoid asbestos, not disturb anything that's happening there. And so we're going to look at some do's and don'ts here. So if you know that you have products in your home that has asbestos, leave those materials alone. Don't be damaging them. You keep activities to a minimum because you don't want to disturb those. Take precautions to avoid damaging asbestos containing materials. And if you are going to have items removed, so for example, maybe you have a really old home and the old linoleum perhaps had asbestos and you're wanting to remove that, it might be good to hire a professional, someone who's trained to do that, because if you rip out that old linoleum, you would be releasing those particles. So definitely search for experts in the field. So what not to do: dusting, sweeping, vacuuming. We're gonna release those particles into the air, right? We're going to be disturbing them. We don't want to be sawing, sanding, scraping, drilling holes into asbestos materials. So again, we're just not wanting to disturb those things. So wet mopping, using a paper towel that's wet to clean up dust and then disposing of those, as opposed to disturbing them through the vacuuming and sweeping, would be ways that we could do that. So that's asbestos, super quick. When we look at lead, there are a variety of sources of lead, and those are listed on the slide. And definitely there's a lot of health concerns related to lead, especially for children and pregnant women. And oftentimes, people may not be showing signs of having lead poisoning. Other times there will be signs. One fact is that 1 out of every 40 American children have too much lead in their bodies. And the rate of lead poisoning, I thought this was interesting, is even higher in cities. And so we just need to be really cautious and concerned about that. So a variety of questions to ask. Are you in an older home? Is there cracking, chipping, flaking paint? Are there places where the paint is being rubbed? Definitely we don't want to have a crib next to a windowsill where the child, we know with kids, everything goes into the mouth and they like to chew on things. So we want to make sure we remove those temptations there. Do you have water pipes made with lead? Have you recently remodeled or renovated? Is there lead in the soil outside of your home? Where are your folks that live in your home? Where are they working? Are they exposed to lead? Having your children tested for lead. Definitely ask your physicians to have that done, or have neighborhood children or playmates ever been tested and have high lead in their blood tests. That would be an indicator definitely to get your kids checked and to look around. So what can we do? Definitely have your kids tested, find out if there's lead in your home, and do everything that you can to protect your kids from lead. Drinking water. Right? What might be in our drinking water? What do we need to be concerned about? Lots of things here. Typically, we're looking at the bacteria, nitrates, lead and copper, maybe some other harmful chemicals. So we need to think about, where does your water come from? Is it public water supply, or does it come from a well? Typically, I like to trust that our public water supply is safe. They need to be testing that. They need to be letting us know if there's concerns with that, either by sending letters out or printing it in the local newspaper. So we need to know first, where is your water source coming from? And then what type of pipes does your house have? Is it lead pipes or copper pipes? And there are concerns with both of those. So some action steps that you can do first is to clear the pipes. So when you wake up in the morning or you get home from work there, and if you have those copper or lead pipes, they're suggesting you let the water run for a few minutes, until that temperature of the water changes. You're clearing the pipe and getting rid of anything that had been settling there. Also, if you have that copper or lead pipes, they're suggesting not to use hot water from the tap for cooking, drinking, or making formula, but to use the cold water and then heating it up. We all have a responsibility to protect our water supplies. So if you use insecticides or pesticides or poisons, weed poisons, make sure you're using those appropriately as indicated on the labels. Make sure you're storing your chemicals carefully. Don't be throwing those in the garbage or dumping them down the drain. Clean up after your animals, right? Because we don't want dog waste to be running into the rivers or ditches, into our lakes. And if you have that private water supply or a well, have your well tested. And again, protect your water supply. Are there, depending upon how your property is set up, are there things that might be draining into that well that you don't want happening? So those were super quick. There is a really nice Healthy Homes checklist, and we'll include a link in this in our follow-up email. But the National Center for Healthy Homes has a really nice checklist. We will include that. So we encourage folks to take time to do that. This is that list of 8 things for keeping your home healthy again. And I just wanted to put this back in here to remind us that we really do have control over a lot of things. And so we can take steps and actions to keep our homes healthier. We also wanted to mention that it can be hard to find resources to fix indoor air quality problems. But if you qualify, there are some low-income weatherization programs that are out there. They can help with insulation, air sealing, some of those things that might address combustion, ventilation, and radon. So definitely look into the energy assistance and weatherization resources in your communities. Typically, our local community action programs would be offering those resources. So definitely check them out. We will include these links in the follow-up email as well, but the HUD, the first one is from the EPA, Care for Your Air. And then we have one on healthy home maintenance, the checklist. And then the last 2 are from HUD on Help Yourself to a Healthy Homes booklet, and Everyone Deserves a Safe and Healthy Home. Someone had a question in the chat earlier about those household cleaning supplies, and I referenced one of these publications. So we'll have these links in the follow-up email as well. So we have just a couple minutes left. Lauren, if you haven't already, please put that eval link in the chat so that folks have that. We'll include that link in the follow-up email too. But if folks can share, what's one action that you plan to take as a result of what Pat and I have been able to share real quickly today in this quick hour? Lots of information, lots of strategies. But if we can have folks put things in, getting well water tested, yes, lots of good things. Thanks, Lauren added a question. Are there any good books, Pat, for learning about how houses work for people that don't know where to start? And someone recommended a book, How Your House Works by Charlie Wing. Are there any other books that you suggest, Pat?
Yeah, that's a good one. I just realized I thought it was sitting right behind me here, but I took it to the other office. There's a new book out by a gentleman named Allison Bales, and his company and social media is Energy Vanguard. One of necessarily promote an individual per se, but he just wrote a new book, and it's called "A House Needs to Breathe, or Does It? An Introduction to Building Science in Your Home." Really, I mean, it's going to be, it's not just for, everyday consumer, but for folks like you that are obviously digging deeper, wanting to go a little deeper in any of these issues or understand the building science behind some of these things, that would be an excellent resource. And it's very reasonable.
Great. Thanks, Pat.
On the other side, I would encourage you to look at is the Building Science Corporation. It's buildingscience.com. In the building science world, including moisture management, energy efficiency, indoor air quality, both building enclosure and mechanical systems, that is probably the greatest resource that we have out there of material. It is private, but it's all open domain, and it's not behind a paywall or anything like that. And there's just marvelous resources there. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Department of Energy. Department of Energy has a site called Building America Solution Center. And that's very rich. We're one of DOE's Building America teams, have been since 2010. And we do research, and then we have to write, case studies and articles, like readable material that they post up there. And so it's very comprehensive. It's called Building America Solution Center.
Great.
Yeah. So I encourage you. That's very broad, and that's it's public government, like EPA or HUD.
Perfect. I'll be sure to connect with Pat, and we'll include those links in the follow-up email. Thank you, Lauren, for putting the evaluation link in the chat there. So if you need a certificate of participation, or if you're seeking, again, those U of M well-being points for insurance purposes, please complete the evaluation and just follow those steps. But we really appreciate your feedback on the webinar, and please give us ideas for future topics. We would appreciate that. We do have just a few more webinars coming up in our January through April round, and we're currently working on our May through August webinars. So if you indicated in the registration that you wanted to continue receiving emails from us, you'll get that. So definitely we're excited to share those with you. You can also check out our U of M Extension courses and events page for our family development webinars and events, as well as from our other departments, our youth development, community vitality, and our AFNR, our Ag, Food, and Natural Resources folks. We do encourage everyone to get social with us. Check us out on social media. We'll have this in the follow-up email as well. Whew, just a few minutes late, so much information to cover. But Pat and I'll hang around here for a few minutes to answer any questions. Lauren, I think we could probably turn the recording off.
I would like to add, based on some of the comments, frequently we are our own worst enemy. So just be thoughtful about what things we bring into the house. Be thoughtful about what we do in the house. There was comment on hobbies. Many of the hobbies have chemicals and or fine particulates associated with them, and deserve to have a special space with proper ventilation or filtration. And obviously you need to take personal protection as well. And this idea that things are linked, if we are going to seal, I always say we're trying to achieve efficient, durable, and healthy home. Those are all connected together, but sometimes when we do something for energy efficiency, like make the house more airtight, which is a good thing for a whole lot of reasons. It's good for energy and moisture control, et cetera. You got to make sure we've got the ventilation. You got to make sure your combustion equipment will work properly, right? So it's just always kind of being mindful of what's connected to what. And that's back to that kind of building science book. It talks about those connections. And so we can make decisions and not have an oops or gosh, I wish I would have thought of that later.
Very good points, Pat. Thank you. Thank you.